The surging coronavirus forces California to explore a possible curfew. The examples from around the world that may influence one here.
COVID has hit San Diego's Latino community especially hard. Tonight, signs of hope in an effort to save lives is working.
Plus, a controversial South Bay development approved. From wildfire to climate, the competing concerns surrounding the plan.
ABC 10 News at 6 starts now.
It's been 9 months since the first COVID-related death was confirmed in the U.S. Today, the virus has now claimed the lives of more than 250,000 Americans, and it's not slowing down. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Cases are still surging, and California may be hit with a curfew. Now, we have told you how Governor Newsom is looking at how other states and countries are handling their curfews. And tonight we have learned that San Diego may also be a model. Our ABC 10 News anchor Derek Stahl is going in depth on what California's curfew might look like.
According to a county spokesman, the state has asked San Diego County for more information about its 10 p.m. mandated closure policy for restaurants. Starting Friday, Los Angeles County will enact a similar measure it's calling a business curfew, requiring restaurants and other non-essential businesses to close at 10 p.m. Governor Newsom says he's also reviewing studies on curfews in 4 countries: France, Germany, Portugal, and Saudi Arabia.
We have a lot of questions about what that looks like, what that doesn't look like. Who does it impact? Who doesn't it impact? What does a real curfew mean in terms of just certain kinds of industry and business activities? That's what we're referring to in this space.
In all 4 countries, restrictions have changed over time, and it's not clear which version California is looking at. Under France's old rules, restaurants and bars had to close at 9 p.m. And in Germany, restaurants previously closed at 10 p.m. But many European nations have recently adopted stricter curfews with limits on movement.
Where you have areas that are at very high risk, do you close them off in some way to not allow the spread areas with lower risk, right? We've seen that across the world, and then we see that dealt in different ways.
Under France's new month-long lockdown, police ticket people who don't carry written permission, justifying their need to leave home for reasons like going to work, buying groceries, or getting medical help. They're allowed outside to exercise for 1 hour a day. In most of Portugal, shops close at 10 p.m., restaurants at 10:30, and people have to be back in their homes by 11 p.m. with limited exceptions. On Saturdays and Sundays, it's even earlier. People have to stay home starting at 1 p.m., and there are police checkpoints limiting travel between cities. And then there's Saudi Arabia. From March until late June, the kingdom imposed a series of curfews that significantly limited movement. At times, police enforced a 24-hour nationwide curfew where people were allowed outside only from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. to get medicine, food, or supplies, and only within their specific neighborhood, not other parts of the city.
Areas can be cordoned off to restrict transmission, and that can work.
SDSU epidemiologist Dr. Eyal Oren says studies have shown various curfews do lower case rates, but he says compliance and enforcement might become an issue. Many European countries paired their restrictions with big financial assistance programs to make them more popular. California's curfew might wind up being similar to the restrictions we're already used to, but Dr. Oren says there would still be an important change.
I do think that some of the words we've been using are kind of stale.
He says simply starting to use the word curfew might be enough of a messaging jolt to help change some people's behavior. Derek Stahl, ABC 10 News.
We also reached out to the California Department of Public Health, but they declined to provide more details on plans under consideration. The governor could release more information on a potential curfew this week. San Diego's COVID cases continue to show that upward trend. Our 14-day rolling average for positive tests now closing in on 5%. Today, the county reported 922 new COVID cases. That brings our total to 67,240. Tonight, 12 more San Diegans have succumbed to the virus. That's the most we have seen for a single day in weeks.
In the last 30 minutes, Vista Unified confirmed it's closing 3 more schools tomorrow because of COVID cases. Vista High, Roosevelt Middle, and Vida Middle are all affected. This follows closures at Rancho Buena Vista High, Roosevelt Middle, and Vista Magnet School. There have been more than 40 cases after students returned, each time the person did not contract the disease on campus. The district is offering parents the option to re-register their children for virtual learning instead of a hybrid model. Members of the Latino community make up nearly half of all COVID-related deaths in San Diego. It's one of the hardest hit populations here and around the country. But as ABC 10 News reporter Jennifer De La Cruz explains, efforts to help keep the Latino community safe are showing results.
For Nancy Maldonado, seeing COVID-19 touch her community has not been easy.
I hope that what we're doing is helping.
She's the CEO of the Chicano Federation and one of the biggest advocates for stopping the spread. So far, the Federation and the Latino Health Coalition have handed out thousands of COVID prevention kits to one of our most vulnerable populations.
There is definitely a need for these supplies, and we understand that, especially the thermometers and the wipes and the disinfectant that you can't really get at the stores. One of the things that we hear the most is just thank you for caring.
County numbers show the virus has claimed the lives of Hispanic and Latinos more than any other race, with more than 460 Latino deaths reported since March. To combat the inequity, testing sites have been popping up throughout the South Bay. In August, a site was added at the San Isidro Port of Entry. In September, the Chula Vista Elementary School District approved on-site testing for families and staff.
It's really encouraging folks to go get tested. What we would love to see is to be able to normalize testing among our community and know that it's nothing that people should be ashamed of or embarrassed of, that it is something that all of us should be doing regularly.
With the holidays approaching and cases on the rise, she's hoping their efforts will continue to make a huge difference.
But it's also about protecting our small businesses and making sure that they can stay open and making sure that collectively we're all doing our part to get out of this purple tier and to really fight off this virus.
Jennifer De La Cruz, ABC 10 News.
The Chicano Federation is handing out more supplies and turkeys for families on Tuesday. They will be open from 10 to noon at the National City Library.
A major pattern that has emerged during the pandemic is when cases rise, hospitalizations follow within weeks. Right now, that is true for much of the country. Our partners at KPBS spoke with local hospitals about how they're preparing for a possible increase in patients. So far, San Diego's hospitals say they haven't had to tap into extra resources, but they are ready for any change that comes.
We're very worried about the holidays because with the prevalence of disease increasing and people planning to get together in unmasked settings for holiday dinners and that sort of thing, it could become a perfect storm that puts us in a COVID hell.
State and county health officials continue to stress the importance of wearing a face covering and following those guidelines to keep COVID cases from rising.
Despite the coronavirus infecting a record number of Americans, AAA estimates 50 million people will travel next week for Thanksgiving. And while not as busy as years past, Lindbergh Field is expected to have more people passing through next week compared to the last many months. The airport has stepped up COVID safety measures.
Plexiglass screens at ticket counters. We have signage and floor decals that remind people to social distance. We have increased our cleaning of high volume touch points.
The airport also closed seats to keep people spaced out at the gates, and masks are required at all times. The TSA is advising people to arrive early for flights in case there are crowds. And from holiday travel to a possible curfew, follow the latest coronavirus developments with the ABC 10 News app. You can also track COVID around San Diego. Find it for free in the App Store.
New details in the case of a man charged in his husband's killing in La Mesa. Prosecutors say that he stabbed his partner 50 times before running away. Today, those prosecutors used that information to argue their case against granting bond to Daniel Jordan. This was the scene back in August after Kevin Powell's body was found in his home in La Mesa. Jordan was arrested 9 days later in Reno, Nevada after an apparent suicide attempt that put him in the hospital. Tonight, he remains in jail without bond to wait for his next court appearance in December.
County supervisors approved a hotly contested development in the South Bay today. The plan calls for nearly 2,000 homes, a resort, office building, school, and more on land just east of Chula Vista. Those for it say housing is badly needed. Others believe the project doesn't do enough to address a climate emergency. And last week, we told you that California Attorney General Javier Becerra spoke out against the project, saying that the county needed to do more about the potential wildfire risk before approving it. Cal Fire San Diego Chief Tony Meacham disagrees with that assessment.
This project, of all the projects that we bought before this board, is probably the safest from a fire safety standpoint. It incorporates all of the lessons learned.
Supervisor Nathan Fletcher was the only one to vote against the development.